I've learned a lot about healing past trauma by observing people who are trying to change their lives and watching who moves forward and transforms their personalities and their relationships and their material success in the world, and then watching who does not. And I got to meet a lot of people who were working on themselves because I was in 12-step rooms for decades. And I had periods where I was willing to go to any lengths. I was doing all the work. And then I had these other times where I really didn't do it. I couldn't do it. I didn't have it in me. I would shrink from it. And I would just sort of go along and talk the right talk, but, just do the least amount of work. In my case, it was usually because I was into some relationship that wasn't really compatible with my healing. It was dragging me down, or because I just wanted people to think I had it all together. So I made excuses for the problems I was having, all the conflicts with people, all the financial problems, all the relationship chaos. So if you're not moving forward, I know what that's like. But then I did move forward, and that's what I teach here for anyone who's ready to face the problems honestly and see where they might be resisting what's right, what's in their best interest to make their lives better. So I want to share with you a list of 6 excuses that I hear all the time that I've made myself. And excuses, they're like cement shoes, okay? So if you recognize them, you know there's a big opportunity for you to get free and heal and change your life. You don't want these cement shoes anymore, right? Number 1, the first one is what I call kicking the can down the road. I first need to do X, then I'll do Y. And it's an artificial sequence, right? Often people will put giant projects between where they are now and where they want their life to be. Like, I'll start eating healthy once things stop being so stressful. I'll do it then. It'll get better then. I'll leave this terrible relationship once I get my sanity back. I hear that a lot. That's a really dangerous fallacy. You're actually not going to get more sane in a terrible relationship. You're going to get ground down. So it's going to be much more difficult for you to leave the longer you stay. You'll often see people sabotaging their goals with some foolish action, something that really sets them back. Like, they want to go back to school, but then they go into debt and then they can't afford to go to school. Or they want to get into a relationship, but then they hook up with some crappy ex and get all emotionally wrecked about it, or spend 6 months kind of, emotionally latched onto this thing that's not going anywhere. They're not going to get into that great relationship they were hoping for, not in that year. The second one is what I call getting on a high horse, where you're thinking, you know what, I'm not like all those shallow normies. Like, I have to suffer. And you get this with, I'm an artist, or I can't be expected to work full time, or I can't really care for my responsibilities because I'm just so, hurt or so creative. It's a superiority over other things. High horses, nobody likes them, and they don't help you solve your trauma. The third one is the straw man. Do you know what a straw man is? It's like this artificial entity where you can put all the blame and you go, well, I can't change because this situation is completely holding me back. But it's kind of a fake thing, right? Or it's something where you're sort of constructing it as this big obstacle, but the obstacle may not be as big as you think. So this would be something like, the problem is with the system. It's rigged against people like me. It's capitalism, it's patriarchy, it's the diet culture. People are idiots and they have this religion or this political view and so on. But staying stuck and blaming it entirely on outside entities and people it's an excuse. It's an excuse to not change. And it'd be so great if you could honestly say that change was impossible because of this issue, or that the group of people make it impossible for you, because then all you have to do is get them to change and you'd be fine. But that's not how it is. A, they're not going to change. And B, even if they did, you would still have your sort of trauma symptoms. You'd still have the things inside that are limiting you. So you might not ever be rich. You might not ever have a career of your dreams. But I guarantee you, if you can face and work on what is holding you back in here and in here, you can change. People can make positive transformations under all kinds of circumstances. They do that when they're poor. They do it when they're incarcerated. They do it when they have to live in hiding. Yes, there are huge obstacles and disadvantages, and life is not fair. But every person, including you, is capable of great things based on where you are right now. For each of us, the job is finding how in the environment in which we find ourselves, with the strengths and the weaknesses that we have, with the cards we've been dealt, what can we strive for? Can we move forward? Because we can blossom despite everything. All right, the fourth one I call collapsing. I give up. I can't do things like this job or this conversation or this obligation or this relationship where I promised someone I'd help them, but now I'm tired. Tiredness is a huge form of collapse. And as you know, tiredness has a lot to do with choices that you make. And yes, I know some people have health conditions, chronic fatigue or cancer or long COVID, or even worse things. And that's another story, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Even when you have illnesses like that, it still requires taking care of yourself and maximizing your energy to the best of your ability. So there's no scenario where people with CPTSD really can get away with trashing their bodies and sacrificing their energy and their motivation. It hits us harder than people who didn't have huge trauma. We can prevent a lot of the health risks that are correlated with trauma, but it means really, really taking care of ourselves. Sleep, healthy food, and exercise. Those are the basic building blocks. If you're doing those things, you don't have to be perfect, but if you can do them at 80%, wow, then you can get to work on the emotional reasons that you sometimes collapse. When you have that together, you can start to look at the outside reasons you sometimes collapse. But it's got to start in here. People who are quite ground down inside are not in a good position to change the world or change other people or make things better. It starts here. So maybe you were trying to put yourself out there and it brought up a lot of fear. Or maybe you're really vulnerable to criticism and you don't have the kind of friends who help you keep criticism in perspective. You know, it's cool. It's just one person. It's okay. I get that. Maybe you let problems pile up and it's too hard to face the mountain of problems. But there's a way forward, and it's not through escaping into substances or the internet or anger or isolation. It's a day-by-day process of showing up, doing the good things that keep you feeling okay, doing the work to keep a community of supportive people around you. I know it's easier said than done, but it's doable. And using the tools that help you do all that one day at a time. 12-step groups. You can use my daily practice. It's a free set of techniques. Saved my life. I teach it to everybody. It's a free course. It's down in the description section under every video I make. It's on the free tools page of my website. Please go find it. Check it out. You can come to free calls with me once you've signed up. We do the techniques together. I answer questions. It's a great way we can meet each other. You can also join my membership if you want. But if you're trying to change these behaviors where you're making excuses for changing your life, these are the areas where you might be getting bogged down. Okay, the next one is magical thinking. This is where you decide to believe that some bad situation you've created in your life, it's just happening to you. Bad things do just happen sometimes, but I'm talking about the things you actually chose, which becomes especially clear if the same bad thing happens again and again. Have you been there? I have. The abusive work environment, the emotionally avoidant partner, for example. Your trauma may be driving you to these patterns, but the pattern isn't going to change until you change it. So try to notice if you're making excuses for your patterns. What you hear people saying is, I'm just unlucky, or I'm cursed. I used to say that. I really thought it too. I'm like, I'm cursed. You know, everything I touch just turns to crap. I saw later it was me. Or you believe that the problem is that you attract people who hurt you, you know, narcissists, manipulative people. The problem isn't actually who is attracted to you. It's who you are attracted to. It's who you let into your life, who you get into a relationship with. When you can't detect who somebody is, or you get in so fast that you don't realize till too late what they're like, that was you. That was you, okay? And you take your power back when you admit, I keep being attracted to narcissists versus they just find me. I don't know why. All right, the next one is what I call fatalism. Fatalism is when you believe that something has to be that way. It's inevitable. And in traumatized people, it shows up as, my parents abandoned me, so I always end up with people who abandon me. And yes, it's absolutely true that the pattern of childhood tends to show up as your pattern in adult relationships, tends to, but you can change that. It's not inevitable. It's actually, when you have perspective on it and you've been working on it, you can see every time where you ignored the red flag and you walked right in anyway. There's this little moment where you can change how you do that. You actually have the power to do that. So watch out when you explain your problems this way, as if there's a direct cause and effect that you play no role in. My parents made me like this. I'm like this. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm an empath. And even calling yourself an adult child of an alcoholic, all of that, the labeling of yourself, it's just a way of sort of giving up on all your potential to be different, to be not so affected by what happened to you as you are right now. You have that potential. You're a fully feeling, fully capable human being. You're working to heal the effects of the past and become yourself. What happened to you is not your identity. When you keep focusing on that identity, those abusive events or the neglect, it's a distraction. You know, believing that is distracting you. It's a coping mechanism that's making it so you don't have to focus on the problems right in front of you. The way you might be isolating and avoiding your own life, the way you might not be taking responsibility, or you're pushing people away with emotions you haven't yet learned to regulate, or you're living as if somebody is somehow coming to save you. That's really common. You need to save you. I know it's sad, but it's true. You need to save you. And you can do that by facing the problems and looking for the parts of those problems where your own trauma-driven thinking or dysfunctional choices have played a part. You can focus on those, not because you're bad, but because this is the only part of life where you really do have power in yourself in present time. Okay, the last big excuse, it's really a whole category of excuses, and it's what's known as spiritual bypass. And the people who do this are sometimes religious, they're sometimes spiritual, sometimes they're against religion and spirituality, or their ideology is a religion. You know, it could be like a political belief, but they get so locked in that they cannot see reality. And this is stuff like, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. It's all good. Or if it's meant to be, it'll happen. Or God doesn't give you more than you can handle. I particularly hate that one because I've lost people to suicide, so it's just patently true. Well, I don't think God gives you those circumstances, but people frequently end up with things they can't handle. That happens. So I consider that a spiritual bypass. A lot of spiritual bypass, what it really is encouraging words that are meant to lift you up and keep you going when things are tough, but they can be used to pretend that you have no agency. They can be used to just make an excuse, I just can't do anything about this. Any belief system can be used by you or people who want to exploit you to put up with crap. So doctors who tell you your trauma symptoms are all imagined, that's a belief system of theirs. Therapists who tell you that the fact you're still miserable after 2 years is because you just need to feel your feelings or grieve or whatever, and you're like, I don't know, I've been crying every day for years. That's a spiritual bypass. That's not dealing with the reality of the situation. You need and deserve to feel happier, to feel more ease and comfort right now. So don't BS around with other people's excuses and don't make your own. Healing is possible when you can recognize your own symptoms and then work on ways to soften them. When you can recognize your own self-defeating behaviors and work on ways to change them. You don't have to do it all at once. Sometimes you just pick the one that's causing the most problems for you and start there. And if you want to see my list of common self-defeating behaviors, I've got that lined up for you right here, and I will see you very soon.